This program is brought to you by Ignite TV. Now you're in command. Visit Rogers.com for more details.
Welcome to Her Story, the journey to winning a seat at the table. I'm your host, Mary Jane Murray, and this program is a series of conversations with inspirational women with amazing stories to share. And stories are a tapestry of lifelong events and experiences. So let's explore the journey. My guest today is Sharen Skelly. And she has lived in the Grey Bruce area for over 30 years. She is a retired registered nurse, a community volunteer, a freelance writer. I didn't know that about you, Sharen, and a local environment activist, as well as being a community health educator. And along with all of those other things, Sharen also finds time to host and as the host and community producer of the TV program Community Close-Up here on Rogers TV. And, you know, over the years, we often see very accomplished women in interesting roles. And that spark can emerge at any age and at any stage. And this is Sharen's journey. Welcome, Sharen. Did we catch it all?
Yeah, most of it, yes.
Yeah, okay. Thank you for taking the time. And as I mentioned to Sharen off camera, and we are now on camera, that Sharen was the inspiration for the third season of Her Story. When in general conversation, she was telling me about this amazing community that she grew up in. So Sharen, why don't we start off with telling us about the community that you grew up in?
Okay, I will. I was born in Sudbury, and I was raised in a small community. Well, it's 3,600 people, but it's about 25 miles, I don't know kilometers that well, northeast of Sudbury. It's called Capreol, Ontario, and it's a small CN railway town. It's quite a big stop, though, on the railway route, east-west Canadian railway route. And I'd say about 75% of the people in the town work for CN, and the other 25% work for a small mine. I believe the mine may have stopped production of iron ore. It was called, for one part of its life, it was called Moose Mountain Mine, and then it went to National Steel. I think it's starting to open up production again. But if you actually follow the road up to Capreol and then go a little north, the road actually ends. It's the end of the road. But the people in Capreol, as I said, most of them worked for the railroad. And so they were either people that operated the trains, the Trans-Canada passenger train or the freights, or they cared for the trains. They were carmen, we called them. They cleaned the trains. They kept them in good operation. Or they kept the tracks in good operation. But a lot of them were immigrants. And they were not as the immigration we see today, which is visible minority, but they were people from Eastern Europe or Mediterranean areas. So we had neighbors that were from, say, Portugal, Italy. A lot of people were from, say, Lithuania, Ukraine, and a lot of people didn't speak English. So the man would come over and get these jobs that didn't require a lot of technical skill, and they would do the we would say grunt work, and they would really work hard every day, and their wives would be at home, and they didn't learn to speak English. There was no ESL, nothing for them. And a lot of these ladies, friends of mine, their mothers never did learn to speak English. And they had these boxcar houses. They were literally boxcars made into houses. So my house was a small house, very modest, not the size of a wartime house, smaller than that. A lot of the houses were like that. And I literally lived on the other side of the tracks. Like the tracks were there was a road, and there was my house. So we were in a very modest neighborhood. But interspersed with my house were these boxcar houses, and they're still there today. You can tell when they have realtors have for sale signs. I can pick out houses that are boxcar houses, and they've just added like little porches and little add-ons in the back, but you can tell which ones are boxcar houses, and they made these houses their homes. But a lot of the immigrants had the best gardens. Like they'd have the green beans growing really high, and the ladies would have them tied up with their nylons. Like they knew how to do the really good gardens. But as I say, they never did learn to speak English. And if they had a death in the family, the ladies would wear black seem forever. You know, their culture was deeply ingrained in our community. So it was a wonderful community to live in. And so close to us was Sudbury, which is another multi-ethnic community. And my brother, my sister, and I all went to high school because we were Catholic. My mom and dad wanted us to have a Catholic upbringing. We went to school in Sudbury, and there again with the mines, same thing. They came over from Europe, and a lot of my friends' mothers, to this day, like a lot of them are passing away now. They never did really learn to speak English. So, but in our town, there was also French. A lot of people don't realize that once you hit, say, Sundridge, North Bay, it's a bilingual. I mean, if you don't speak French, you know, that's just the way it is. And our school was St. Mary's École Saint-Marie, and the one side of the hall was the French kids and the other side was the English kids. And at recess, it was just madness. Everybody played together. And when we went to church, the priest said half the sermon in French, half in English. So you learned to speak French. It was like French immersion, just the old fashioned way. Everybody just played and fought and dated, and everybody learned French that way. But it was a great place to grow up. And it was really multicultural. We learned about their food, their life, their everything. But a lot of these people, they never even got back home. That was them coming here, and there was nothing for them. Just they came here, they worked, and they never saw their families again.
Well, it's sad for the people who came over and were never able to return back to their home country. But at the same time, it seems that they actually built a life, very hardworking, very dedicated, building community, even if they weren't speaking English, but they were building community within their own network of friends and language and culture. And that must have been very impactful for you when you were growing up. And I can see how it has shaped some of your views and attitudes as you became an adult.
It did, and it makes you appreciate it made us appreciate what we had, but it also, well, we learned a lot about the other cultures, but it makes me appreciate the immigrant experience that I'm seeing now, and I know how hard it is for them. And I totally understand I can appreciate what they're going through, and it makes me want to support the services that they're getting even more, because I know what it would be like for them not to have it.
Well, yes, and I think that as a community we do come together to support newcomers coming into our community, and I really value your concern for diversity and inclusion within our community. But also just reflecting back a little bit more, eventually you grew up and you left the community. And so if we have a retired registered nurse as part of your background, why or how did you get into nursing?
Well, my mother's from a family of 10. And she had 5 sisters, and they were either nurses or teachers, or, you know, that era. So I thought, well, I'll be a nurse. But I left when I was 17, and I never went back home. we all left home. I have a brother and a sister, and we all left home when we were in our none of us left after 18, so we all left really early. And I went to nursing. They called it nursing school. I went before it was a college. I was in the last class at a nursing school associated with a hospital, and the first year of a college. So I went into that transition. It was a really unique way to be at school. I was in a high school that had all girls, run by nuns, which was, I loved it. It was the best. They were the most feminist people you will ever meet. They encouraged us to be whatever we wanted and be strong and all of that. And then I went to nursing school, all nuns, and they knew that I was young and they pushed me, and I was angry because I said they were hard on me, but I was 17. What did I expect? And then the next year of my college, it was a college and there were boys. So you can imagine that. First time. Oh. And I had fun. But then when we graduated, there were no jobs, full-time jobs for any of us in Ontario. So there was this big book, and it had all the hospitals in the country. So a group of us each took a province and applied to hospitals in that province. And one of my friends got New Brunswick, and she got an interview in Fredericton. So I said, can I go with you? And she said, sure. So I went. I didn't even have an interview, but she had her interview and said, oh, I have a friend in the waiting room. Could you interview her too? So she did, and we both got jobs. And my first job was in Fredericton at a brand new veterans hospital. And they were First and Second World War veterans. And that was my first job. But then I went to Moose Factory, and I worked in the remote north for years. And then I went to another small hospital, but it wasn't remote north, it was Hornpain. And that was where I met my husband. And since then, I've been traveling around the country. I worked out in Calgary, and then I worked around the province here. But I've had a chance in my nursing career to work in almost every department in the hospital. I was a scrub nurse in the OR. I worked in ICU, pediatrics, psychiatry, ER, everything. And I ended up here. And when I retired from working in the Community Care Access Center, which is community health. So I've had a wonderful nursing career, and I did everything I wanted to do as a nurse, and I did a lot of education too. Of course, you have to. And I've almost finished my degree. I've got 2 courses, and I'm going to do those next year in my spare time.
As we know, the healthcare field is really in the news these days, but it has always been a sense in our province that we don't have enough nurses, or our healthcare is always underfunded, and we haven't had the value given to nurses and people working in the healthcare field the same respect and acknowledgement of not only their skills and talents, but their years of service. So in your journey in nursing, did you ever find that you had a voice, that you were able to be heard in certain circumstances, particularly when you have to advocate for your patients?
Well, when I started nursing, there wasn't even a union. Well, there was, but it was very rare that you worked for a place that had a union. So that was our big concern right there, nurses' rights. So like when I started, in some places, if you were 6 months pregnant, you had to quit. And that was almost standard. And once you quit, when you came back, you had to start back at all the wage increases you had were gone. You had to start back at the bottom again, things like that. Or if you were full-time and you went on maternity leave, which was 3 months, you came back and started back at the wage you were at. Like when I was out in Calgary, I had my daughter, but I was sick before I had her, so I had 3 months off total. So I had a cesarean section and went back when she was 6 weeks old. So those are the things that we fought for. And when I was in Alberta, we went on strike. And because they were going to cut all the night nurse coverage in half. Well, we knew that was dangerous, so we had to go on strike. And, that was, a lot of nurses didn't carry picket signs, and the ones that did, I remember getting tomatoes and eggs thrown at us. And so when I was working, nurses weren't heroes. Nurses were not heroes. And we would even up until 15 years ago, it was routine to get punched and kicked and sexually assaulted. I've had all that done at work, and have people say the service here sucks. And like, this isn't a hotel. I mean, I'm your nurse. I'm not, this is not Motel 8 or whatever, 6, whatever it is. But they'd say the service here sucks. Get somebody else. There is nobody else. And then when I came to work here in Grey Bruce, there was no union where I was working. And I had to start, even though I had all this experience, I had to start at the lowest wage. And if I wanted to work overtime, I had to call and get a permission. In the middle of an emergency, I knew I was going to have to work overtime. I was supposed to have to call and get a permission. That made no sense. So with another person and I, we got the nurses certified in the Bruce Peninsula for the Ontario Nurses Association. And in negotiating the first contract, you're at risk of losing your job. Mm-hmm. And I was followed and threatened and all these sorts of things. So, that is something that people may not know. And some of those people aren't walking the earth anymore, so I can say that, and maybe I'll put it in my book someday. But the things that you go through to get those union rights for people are very, very, they are risky for yourself, but you have to do it to get those rights. But I would say that nursing is a very misogynist profession. When I was working, if there was me and a male nurse and the same amount of experience, and we applied for a job, the male nurse would get it. It was routinely. And it just routinely happened. And I suspect it still does. So,
I was hoping that we had come a long way in terms of, okay, so now I better understand some of the struggles that nurses have gone through over the years. And you have that activist spirit in terms of fighting for what you think is right and what is reasonable for accreditation for nurses and respect for nurses, and particularly the wage equality, which is so important as well.
It's better now. It really is better now, but it didn't get there without a big struggle, and they have to fight to keep that.
Yes,
that's the thing. They have to fight to keep what they have.
And of course, there's this concern now in our current healthcare system too, that it's underfunded and under-resourced, and so that battle hasn't ended yet. In terms of not at all. So you've made quite an impact on your journey in nursing, but you've also merged into the field of freelance writing as well. And is that part of your nursing experience, or is that going down a different route?
Well, after I retired, I had to retire because I developed fibromyalgia. And that's not uncommon for when I retired. Several other people retired a lot around that time too, with chronic illness. Nursing is not easy on the body, so I when I retired with a chronic illness, I wanted the chronic illness not to define me. I had to learn how to live with it and still be productive. And disability pensions and that sort of thing want you to be sort of, stuck at home and do nothing. They would prefer you just to be a disability. And I think that we need to sort of work with insurance companies and that sort of thing to let them allow people to be productive, and even if that just means volunteering in the community, but still being members of society that are doing good and making the people feel like they are valuable, and I knew I can write. Anybody that's in the working can write, and I took a course in writing, and but I was already in my third year of university, so I just did some writing. I had a column at the Sun-Times for a while, and I did some Huffington Post stuff, and I still do write. And as I said, I'm going to finish my degree. I've just got a lot of things on my plate right now, but yeah, writing is something everyone can do, and everybody should do. Even if you feel that you're not an academic, everybody should just write something every day. Keep a gratitude journal. Everybody's got something to be happy and grateful for. You'd be surprised.
Well, absolutely. And I have this quote that from you may recognize it. And really, it just speaks to what you've been saying about gratitude and about giving back. It's good for the soul, and it's good to give back. And so whether you're healthy all the time, or whether you have an illness for a long period of time or a short period of time, is that gratitude of feeling that, I'm still a productive, whole and holistic person. I can give back to my community. So you've been volunteering with Rogers for over 10 years, maybe closer to 15 years in various capacities. And in that way, you are supporting the community. And with your TV program, Community Close-Up, which celebrates, features, and highlights not-for-profit organizations that are providing services in our community. So how did you actually get into television?
Well, I watched Rogers, and I thought, wow, that's really, really good programming. I really think it's great programming. And I thought, well, I'd really like to help out there, because I really think it's quality programming, because we no longer have local, affiliates with CTV Global, that sort of thing. And we need to provide this programming to the community. And I thought, well, maybe I can help out there somehow. So that's what I did. And my sister thinks it's great that I'm doing this, because she used to do this, well, on a little bit bigger scale, but she thinks it's great, and she thinks it's great programming too. My brother watches it, all my family watches it, because now they can watch it online. I mean, and the community wouldn't have this if Rogers didn't have volunteers to provide this. And it's not just the people on the screen, it's the people behind the cameras, the people that are out doing the hockey games in Meaford and on Sound lacrosse, Diane and I forget the other lady's name, Lois. Going out and featuring the businesses, Attack Rap, all of that. People love that. And Krista, Wandering Gray Bruce, you guys doing the show on Wednesday. I mean, people love it, and we have to keep doing it. And Mark, if it wasn't for Mark, we wouldn't have any of this. So. Well,
I agree with you there. And he's pretty patient in putting up with all of us, but, and working out all the technical details and goof ups sometimes. But
that's how I got into it, watching it and thinking, I think I should do something like this, because I watch it and I enjoy it. So that's how I did it.
You were, I believe, on a camera person at one point, were you not? I mean, that's
not a very good one, but I did do that. Yeah.
Well, you're an excellent host for Community Close-Up, and that's such a valuable asset that we have in our community, because particularly for people who are coming into our community and not being aware of all the services and the not-for-profits and the organizations and what they do in our community, this is a really anchor program to help not only entertain people who are embedded in our community, but for new people who are coming into it.
Yes, and I learn something new every time I do the show. Every time.
Yeah.
I learn something new. So.
Well, that was the very good segue into the next topic of conversation here is, what did you learn about yourself through all of this journey?
I learned that you cannot be successful on your own. You have to have somebody to hitch your star to, so to speak. You have to have people to help you no matter what. So like from the time I was a kid, I had people that supported me and believed in me. Like when I was a kid, I had Father O'Neill was our parish priest, and he thought I was a great reader. And he let me read at church when I was 12. I mean, they never let girls on the altar, and he thought I was good. And he'd coach me by reading the newspaper. I'd read it to him, and he'd sit in the altar or in the choir loft in this big church, and I'd read the newspaper to him and all this stuff. Just, he thought I was a good public speaker. And then I had people throughout my life that supported me, but you can't do things alone. You have to have somebody, if it's a parent or a family friend or someone you trust, you need someone to help you out, believe in you, and find that person. And, and believe in yourself. It's hard to do sometimes, but you have to.
Well, I think those were very good words of wisdom when you said you have to believe in yourself. And our life's journey, as your life journey, has taken so many twists and turns into so many different areas. And that going from being a registered nurse to a host on TV, Rogers TV, has been, quite a journey along the way. But I am getting the cues that we are coming to the end of the program. A half an hour goes by in a blink, as you know. So I have just a couple of little pop questions for you. And that is, what brings you joy?
What brings me joy? My family. My family brings me joy. My grandchildren and my son and daughter and their families.
Yeah. Okay. And, we've all gone through these difficult times over the past 2.5 years, and you have had some challenges in your life as well. So do you have a saying that helps you get through the day and over some of these challenges?
Yes. There's always somebody who has it worse than me. Yeah. It's not that bad.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Sharen. It's really been delightful. And the fact that I've known you for almost 5 years now, and I've learned a lot from you today. So thank you so much for spending the time to have this conversation. And I hope that you will join us again next time on Her Story for another amazing journey.
Thanks, Mary Jane.
Call the Rogers TV viewer response line, email us, or connect with us on social media.